Hi, this is Pat Schwenk from For the Family, and we are excited to announce a brand new video segment here on the site called Take 5 for the Family. We're going to be interviewing different writers and speakers and bloggers about issues related to marriage, parenting, and relationships. And this afternoon, we have the opportunity to kick off this series by talking with Gary Thomas. Gary is the author of over 15 books, and today we're talking specifically with him about parenting. What was most challenging for he and his wife, Lisa, as they parented their kids through different seasons of their life, and what was most rewarding for them as well. And so we hope and pray that it is a blessing to you and to your family.
If God were to say to my wife and I, you could go on a 2-week, all expensive paid trip to anywhere you want to go in Europe, first class, everything is done, or I could magically transport you back to when you were living in that tiny townhome in Manassas, Virginia, with no money, but your kids are 7, 5, and 2, what would you choose? In all honesty, before God, my wife and I wouldn't even blink. We'd say, bring the kids back. We so missed those years. So if I look back to the most challenging seasons, in hindsight, I still look at them as such rich seasons. And I think for us, what made it so difficult right at the start, one of our kids had bad colic and just things that we were just so over our heads. And I think in a lot of issues of parenting, I felt over my head. I desperately wanted to do the right thing, but I didn't have a PhD in parenting. I wanted to be the Bill Cosby figure. He would always have the right words of wisdom, or I would listen to Dr. Dobson, and it just seemed so clear what you should do. It wasn't that clear when I'm dealing with those issues. And that's really what led to Sacred Parenting. Me writing that book, because I saw that God was shaping me as a parent, even more than as a parent. I think I was shaping my kids. So there are difficult seasons, but I would just tell parents, you'll look back and miss those seasons. We didn't have the adolescent rebellion that people talk about. I don't know why. I think it's probably in spite of us, not because of us. We didn't have a season where our kids were cold toward us or cold toward God. There were events. I mean, they're real, but not a season where we were terrified for their souls. And yet I've known some parents, far better parents than us, that had to go through that. And that's a terrifying time. I guess the one thing I would say to parents is just believe the Bible. James 3:2, speaking of teachers, but relevant to all of us, says, we all stumble in many ways. We all stumble in many ways. So your kids are going to stumble. And I see some parents that are surprised when their kids stumble, or shocked, or think that somehow if they're a better parent, if they spend more time, if they pray harder, if they fast once a week, if they make sure they memorize scripture, that somehow their kids won't stumble. Well, then you don't believe scripture. James doesn't say we all stumble in many ways, except if we had exceptional parents. So live with grace. Give yourself grace. Give your kids grace. Realize that God has made provision for our sin. We can learn lessons through our sin. I think that will make the difficult seasons not necessarily easier, because they're never easier, but I think at least you won't lose your hope and your joy in the midst of those seasons.